In recent weeks, troubling rumors have increasingly surfaced in the corridors of global politics. They have not yet been officially confirmed, but are already being actively discussed in diplomatic circles. The subject is South Korea, one of the United States' key allies in East Asia and the Pacific region, which, according to several reputable outlets, is considering the possibility of joining the BRICS bloc. While this information remains insider level, the leaks appeared simultaneously in several sources, including reports in the South Korean newspaper Hankyoreh, citing officials close to Lee Jae-myung's administration, as well as in analyses published by Reuters and Japan's Nikkei. In Washington, there is a clear understanding that such rumors do not emerge from nowhere, and their timing directly reflects the crisis in relations between Seoul and Washington, triggered by Donald Trump's tariff policies. It all began when Trump, upon returning to the White House, decided to implement his long-standing threat and imposed steep tariffs not only on Chinese imports, but also on goods coming from South Korea. South Korean steel, automobiles, and electronics, precisely the sectors underpinning Seoul's export-driven economy, were hit hardest. According to analysts at the Korea International Trade Association, in just the first few months of the tariffs being in effect, losses for South Korean companies exceeded $12 billion. The Korean press openly reports that major corporations such as Samsung, Hyundai, and LG are seriously discussing market diversification and shifting their focus toward cooperation with China, India, and Southeast Asian nations. Amid this backdrop, according to the Financial Times, Lee Jae-myung's administration prepared an analytical report exploring scenarios for a strategic realignment, ranging from partial rapprochement with China to full BRICS membership. An anonymous source in the presidential Blue House stated, "If Washington continues its economic pressure, Seoul will no longer be able to ignore alternative alliances." This signal was received with clear enthusiasm in Moscow and Beijing. Russian and Chinese state media are already publishing articles about the inevitable expansion of BRICS with new high-tech economies. Particularly alarming for the Pentagon is the fact that such discussions are emerging not on the periphery, but in a country that hosts 28,000 American troops and is an integral part of the U.S. missile defense system in Asia. Losing South Korea as a reliable ally would deal a blow not only to America's economic interests, but also to its defense strategy in the region. A former senior U.S. diplomat admitted in an interview with the Washington Post, "If South Korea moves toward BRICS, it will be the biggest geopolitical failure for Washington since Vietnam." Meanwhile, within South Korea itself, calls for an independent foreign policy are growing louder. According to a Gallup Korea poll conducted in early August, more than 47% of South Koreans believe that the alliance with the United States brings more problems than benefits, while 52% said that Seoul should expand strategic ties with China, India, and Russia. These numbers shocked analysts in Washington, especially given that just 5 years ago, support for the American presence in South Korea exceeded 70%. Foreign Affairs, in its latest issue, writes that Trump's tariff policy is effectively pushing South Korea into the arms of BRICS. The author of the article, Michael Green, a former State Department advisor on East Asia, notes, "Washington mistakenly takes Seoul for granted, but South Korea has long since become an independent player, capable of choosing alliances based on its own interests." Indeed, South Korea's economy ranks among the 10 largest in the world. Its technology corporations set global trends in microelectronics and the automotive industry, and its diplomatic weight in the Asia-Pacific region is comparable to Japan's. According to Bloomberg, in July, a closed-door meeting was held in Beijing between representatives of China's foreign ministry and a delegation from Seoul, where they discussed possible prospects for multilateral cooperation in the BRICS Plus format. Chinese sources claim the talks were unofficial in nature, but the timing, coinciding with new U.S. tariffs on South Korean automobiles, is clearly not accidental. Moreover, India's newspaper The Hindu reported that Prime Minister Narendra Modi personally discussed with the South Korean leader the possibility of inviting Seoul to the next BRICS summit. All these facts form a troubling picture. The U.S. administration is pretending that the situation is under control, but in reality, Seoul is already reassessing its foreign policy course. If South Korea does indeed decide to join BRICS, the balance of power in the region will change dramatically. The United States would lose one of its key allies. China and Russia would gain a powerful technological center in their camp, and India would strengthen its status as a leader among developing economies. According to sources in European diplomatic circles, Brussels is also closely monitoring these developments. An EU Commission official told Politico, if South Korea joins BRICS, it will send a signal that even advanced economies no longer see the United States as an indispensable partner. For now, everything depends on whether Trump changes his policy, yet his rhetoric remains harsh. At a recent rally in Ohio, he declared that nobody will use America as a wallet. In Seoul, however, this was interpreted differently, as a direct humiliation of an ally that for decades invested billions in maintaining U.S. military bases. Insiders in South Korea's foreign ministry insist that the BRICS question is still being discussed only at the level of expert commissions. But the mere fact of such debates indicates a turning point. For the United States, this is a warning bell. Washington has for too long treated Seoul as a submissive partner, and now it may turn out that one of its most loyal allies is quietly and gradually moving into another camp. A particularly important factor in this story is Japan's growing unease. According to Yomiuri Shimbun, Tokyo is carefully analyzing the rumors about South Korea's possible entry into BRICS and sees in it a direct threat to the balance of power. Japanese officials fear that if Seoul moves closer to Moscow and Beijing, the trilateral cooperation framework of the United States, Japan, and South Korea could collapse. This would hit not only defense projects, but also joint ventures in space and semiconductors. In Tokyo, they openly admit that it was Trump's tariff policy that triggered a crisis now spilling beyond the boundaries of bilateral relations. No less alarming are statements coming from Seoul itself. At the end of July, the influential South Korean economic magazine Mail Business published an interview with a former presidential advisor on foreign trade. He said that South Korea is tired of being a pawn in other people's games and is now ready to consider BRICS as a platform for protecting its own interests. The publication sparked heated debate. Some experts called it a trial balloon, while others are convinced such words would not have appeared without approval from the very top. According to CNN, citing sources in Congress, U.S. intelligence has already prepared a report on the potential risks of Seoul moving out of America's sphere of influence. The report bluntly states that if South Korea joins BRICS, it would open the door for China to deepen its economic penetration of the region. One Republican congressman remarked in a closed conversation, "We risk losing a country we invested in for decades, simply because of the president's stubbornness." Meanwhile, protests are increasingly visible on the streets of Seoul, where demonstrators carry banners reading "No U.S. Tariffs" and "Korea chooses BRICS." South Korean TV networks broadcast these rallies in prime time, and talk show hosts are more frequently asking the blunt question, what has America really given us over all these years? The rhetoric is hardening, reflecting a shift in public opinion that until recently seemed impossible. According to Al Jazeera, BRICS countries are already discussing scenarios under which South Korea could be granted observer status at the next summit. Such a step would allow Seoul to test the waters without formally joining, but even this symbolic gesture would be a blow to Washington. Economists note that Seoul's participation in BRICS could strengthen alternative financial mechanisms, including trade settlements in national currencies and bypassing the dollar in regional deals. All this creates the sense that we are on the verge of a tectonic shift. For the first time in decades, America risks losing not only a military stronghold, but also its credibility in one of the most strategically vital regions of the world. If Trump does not change his rhetoric, South Korea may indeed take a step that would upend the balance of power in Asia. And then history books may record this moment as the point of no return, when allies began to drift into another camp, and America missed its chance to preserve leadership.